How's it going, everybody? Did you inherit a trust fund that takes care of all of your financial needs? Me neither. So we're going to talk about how much you actually need to make, how much you need to save to end up with $1 million by the time you retire. I promise it's going to be a lot less than you think. And I'd forgive you if you've watched some of my other videos and assumed I was a mechanic or a carpenter, but I'm actually a data scientist, so we're going to do something a little bit different today. We're going to dive into some numbers, but I promise I'm going to do my best to not make it a math class, make it as fun as possible. Now, if your name is not Patrick Starr and you've not been living under a rock, you may have noticed that basically everything has gotten significantly more expensive over the last 5 years. Everything from food, housing, gas, cars, you name it. Basically everything's gotten more expensive. And money didn't suddenly start falling from the sky to make up for the difference. So understandably, a lot of people are wondering, how am I going to retire someday? How am I going to be comfortable by the time I can't work anymore? Well, stay tuned. I promise you, I will give you some exact numbers of what you need to target in order to make to someday be able to retire and have complete financial freedom and be as wealthy as you want. And I promise it's attainable for almost anybody, especially if you're watching this and you're my age. Time is on your side, so the time is now, but let's jump into it. Let's take a look at where things are today, and then the things that we need to do to make sure that we'll be in that position when the time comes. So let's answer the first question that we had. Has everything really gotten more expensive? Well, to answer that, here we're looking at the Consumer Price Index chart supplied by the U.S. Bureau of Labor and Statistics. This is looking across all consumer items, everything from food, energy, electricity, housing, medical services, you name it. So this averages everything together and compares the prices of the same goods compared to the previous year. So the red line on the chart here, whenever it's zero, that means that the prices of everything on average didn't change compared to the previous year, which, as you can see, doesn't happen very often. Most of the time, prices continue to go up over time. But what's interesting is over the last 20 years, we had a historic high increases of the prices of basically everything across the board. And those prices haven't come back down, since for the prices to go down, they have to be below this zero line, which hasn't happened since after 2008. So looking at this, on average, basically every item that you interact with has gotten significantly more expensive. That's true when we look at housing, which here we see another historic growth in the cost of housing, even greater increase of the cost of new vehicles, which I'm sure you're familiar with if you've done any car shopping in the last few years. And then similarly, the cost of food, just as big of an increase as the cost that we saw in new vehicles. But food is something that quite literally everybody interacts with on a daily basis. You can't live without food. You can live with an old car, you can live in your older house, but you can't live without food. And so no matter who you are, you've probably felt some of these price increases affect you directly. Now, let's compare that with the incomes over the last 50 years. So going back to 1986 all the way through today. Now, incomes continue to go up over time, and they still do today. But what we sort of notice when we look at this, when we go back to that same 5-year period, just before 2020, incomes have not really drastically increased relative to that price increase that we saw across the board. Incomes have increased by a little bit, but they're relatively flat over the last 5 years comparatively. So this is why when people are saying everything feels so expensive, there's definitely some truth to that. Now the question is, what can we do about that? So now that we've established that things are in fact more expensive, what can we do about it? So there are 3 main things that we're going to talk about that you have in your control that are going to dictate how much you have when it comes time to retire. And one is how much time you have for your investments to grow. 2 would be your savings rate, or how much of your income you're actually able to save. And then 3 would be a match, like a 401k match. Now, if you are an entrepreneur or work a job that doesn't offer a 401k match, we'll talk about what you can do to make up for that. But that's going to be a big difference maker, which we'll dive into a lot more detail. Now let's jump right into it. So let's talk about the first and most important of the 3, which is time. So the time your investments have to grow is going to be your biggest asset when you're trying to become a millionaire. You can't get time back once it's gone, and it is the most important of the 3. So if you take nothing else away, take advantage of the time that you have. Now let's get into a couple real world examples and show you exactly why it's so important. So now I've got a tool I put together here to help show exactly what I mean when I say time is so important. So we're going to compare two people. One's going to be our early investor, somebody who watched the video and took it to heart. And then our late investor, somebody who procrastinated, put it off, said, I'll do it later. I think we've all been that person, but let's see exactly why you don't want to be that person in this case. So they're both overlapping each other because they both start at the age of 30 with $50,000. They never put any additional money in, so they just both start at $50,000. And then by the time they reach the age of 65, they now both have $739,000. And that's all just coming from growth. They're not putting in any additional money. That's just the 8% per year on average that you'll get in returns. So really incredible, almost already at our $1 million figure. But the purpose of this is to show you how important time is. So let's bump up our late investor up to the age of 40. So same example where they both put in $50,000 starting out, but you can already see how different where their endpoints are. But just by waiting that 10 additional years, the person in green has already grown to $107,000 by the time the person at the age of 40 puts in their 50 grand. And at the end, instead of ending with $739,000, the person in blue only ended with $342,000. So if you want to be the person in green and not the person in blue, that means the time is right now. Take advantage of all of the time that you have available to you, since the more you have, the easier this is going to be and the less money you have to put into it. So now that we've covered the most important of the three, let's cover the last two, and then we'll jump straight into how much you need to make and how much you need to save to become a millionaire. So savings rate, the easy way to think about that, whatever your income is, subtract however much you pay in taxes and then however much your life expenses are. Of what's left over, what percentage of that are you willing to part with towards investing in your future is going to be ultimately what your savings rate is. So for basically everybody, you have your income and then Uncle Sam takes some off the top. And then of your take-home pay, you have your life expenses, and then what's left over is what you have to spend on fun stuff, trips, travel, food, and then ultimately decide how much of that you want to contribute towards being able to retire with financial freedom. So the same person who makes the same amount of money, depending on how much their life expenses are, will have a drastically different amount left over that they can comfortably invest into their future, depending on how expensive their lifestyle is. So the faster you want your money to grow and the sooner you want to become a millionaire, take it really seriously in regards to reducing your costs as much as possible without going too crazy. Last but not least, so most jobs, if you work a W-2, will offer a 401k match. It'll usually be somewhere around 4%, but your company basically gives you free money which will go towards your retirement as long as you match that contribution. We'll explain exactly how that works. But if you have it, you should absolutely take advantage of it. It's free money, and we'll show you exactly how important that is. Now, if you're in your own business or it's not available to you, there are a couple of ways that you can boost it yourself, but you will have to take it into your own hands, and we'll show you exactly what that looks like. So without taking advantage of a 401k, using our previous cost of living example, however much you save towards retirement is whatever it is. You don't have anything else coming to it, and it's all up to you. Now, if you do have a 401k match, up to however much your company is willing to match, in this case, 4% of the salary. So whatever you contribute, your company will completely match that for free, and it doesn't cost anything from your salary. So instead of only having $3,200 going towards your retirement every year, now you have $6,400, and it didn't cost you anything. So now the moment we've all been waiting for. Let's answer the question of how much you need to make and how much you need to save to become a millionaire. So I got my Millionaire calculator I put together here. I'm going to go through some real world examples. I'll go through as many as I can with and without a 401k match. If you want to put in your exact numbers, I'll upload the code to GitHub, and you're welcome to pull it down and run it yourself. But let's start off with somebody here who's making $60,000 a year, starting at the age of 25, saving 10% of their disposable income. But we have a bit of a problem. We're still at $0 by the age of 65. So this is when it becomes really, really important to reduce our cost of living as much as possible, especially if your income is lower. So ultimately, if you're breaking even, you're not going to have any money left over to save towards retirement. So for somebody making $60,000 a year, they're going to have to reduce their cost of living as much as possible. But even at just saving 10% of their disposable income left over after that, they're already ending at $630,000 by the age of 65 just by saving $87 a month. Now, if we do want to get to our $1 million number, that person making $60,000 a year starting at the age of 25 only needs to save $139 per month to end up at $1 million by the time they turn 65. Now, this person has a 401k match, but at $139, that's just $35 a week about. And I'd be willing to bet that most people probably spend that on coffee or DoorDash on a weekly basis. So it's absolutely attainable. And we can already answer the question of how much you need to make to become a millionaire. And it's not a lot. It's somebody making even less than $60,000. If their cost of living was less than $40,000 a year, it's totally realistic if you start early to end up becoming a millionaire without even having to do too much. Now let's see how all of this breaks down. So to become a millionaire, this person only had to contribute $68,000 of their own money over the course of that 40 years, and the company matched that. So they got an additional $68,000 of contributions from their 401k match, but $871,000 of that $1 million just came from the money growing just by having all of that time to sit in the market. So time is absolutely your most valuable asset, and the earlier you start, the easier it is. Now, let's say this person didn't have a 401k match from their company. So the number cuts in half since now we don't have that additional free money coming from our company. So the amount that we'd have to save becomes significantly higher. So now we go from $139 to $277 to end up over $1 million. And it went from 16% to 32% of their disposable income. So even if you don't have a 401k match, it's absolutely doable. It's just going to be a little bit more intentional, especially if you're not making a ton of money. Now, let's talk about another example. Let's say it's somebody who makes $80,000 a year. Let's say the cost of living jumps up a little bit. Maybe you have a kid. So without a 401k, the amount of money that you have to save usually stays about the same to end up with the same amount as long as you're starting at the same age. The only thing that changes the amount that you need to save per month is the age that you start at. So as we bump this age up, the amount that you have to save to end up with $1 million ends up becoming significantly higher. So going from 25 to 30, we went from under $300 to over $400 just to end up close to the same amount. And if we go up even higher to 35, this continues to become more and more difficult, especially if your income doesn't grow as quickly as your expenses do. So even just going from 25 to 35, we were looking at under $300 a month to end up with $1 million to now when we're 35, now it's over 600. So this is why, again, time is just so important. It is the most valuable asset that you have. And whether or not you have a 401k match, the earlier you start, the easier this is going to be. Now, if you're watching this and you are a little bit older, don't get discouraged. It's always better late than never to get into it, especially if you work a job where you do have a 401k match. Even starting a little bit later makes it significantly easier to end up with over $1 million. Since with a 401k match, making $80,000 a year, you can, starting at the age of 35, you can save $362 a month and still end up over $1 million. Let's look at one more example. For the big ballers out there, if you're making 6 figures or more, it becomes significantly more attainable to not only hit $1 million, but hit $2 million or more, especially if you're starting early. So if you're starting at the age of 35, saving at the same rate as we were when we were making $80,000 a year, that would put us close to $2 million with the 401k match. But now we can save significantly less of our total income and still hit $1 million. Notice the amount is still the same per month, and that basically just completely depends on what age you're starting. But now if we start way earlier, saving the same amount, 300 bucks a month, which is just 16% of your income at $100,000, now you're ending up with close to $2.5 million. So increasing your income is extremely helpful. Reducing your cost of living is a big component, not living beyond your means, and then getting comfortable having a certain amount of your savings going towards your investments and taking advantage of a 401k match if it's available to you. It's not only extremely attainable to become a millionaire someday, but you could easily become a multimillionaire if you play your cards right. So now we've pretty thoroughly answered the question of how much you need to make and how much you need to save to become a millionaire. And it's much, much more attainable than I ever thought it was for most people. I wanted to put this together since I never had anybody to explain how all of these numbers work and how the numbers really work for you. So I wanted to share this with as many people as I could to hopefully inspire some of you to take advantage of the time that you have and end up being financially free someday, especially with how expensive things are and how hard things are out there. Every little bit helps. So if any of you take anything away from this video, it's take advantage of as much time as you can. Time is your most valuable asset. And as you've seen here, the sooner you start, the easier time you're gonna have. Now, hats off to you if you've made it this far in the video. I know we covered a lot of math and numbers today, but hopefully some of those visualizations helped make it a little bit easier to understand how investing works, how the time component plays such a huge factor. A lot of work went into this, but if it helps even one of you, then it was totally worth it. But if you got something out of this video, please go down, like, subscribe, comment, let me know what you'd like to see me dive into in the future. But that's all I've got for you guys tonight. Y'all stay safe out there, and I'll see you later.